Hello students, welcome to Infinity IAS. Today we will have a look at the second lecture in the Science and Technology series. So we will start with Genomic Sequencing and Human Genome Project. Before looking into what is genomic sequencing, we need to understand what is a genome. A genome is an organism's complete set of DNA. So what is the DNA made up of? So here we can see DNA is made up of a sugar phosphate backbone and nitrogen bases. So this is the structure of the DNA. So this yellow thing here, if we see, it is constant. It is a sugar phosphate molecule that are connected. So what is the varying portion of DNA? The varying portion of the DNA is the nitrogen base. So we can see there are different types of nitrogen bases. That is, here if we see A, adenine, C, cytosine, T, thymine, and G, guanine. So these are the different base pairs, and the combination or the sequence varies, that brings the differences in the chromatin material. So these differences are what brings the difference in the expression of genes. For example, if we see there is a base sequence like guanine, thymine, adenine, cytosine, and the corresponding base pairs. This is a gene. Let's say this is a gene. This produces certain protein that will give some cellular function. So the sequence of these nitrogen base pairs determines the protein that is produced from this gene expression. So this sequence is very important in the DNA of any organism. So if we see, a genome is an organism's complete set of DNA. So we know that a human cell has 23 pairs of chromosomes. So 23 pairs of chromosomes. This is a pair, we have 23 pairs like this. And each chromosome will have chromatin. And each chromatin thread is made up of millions of base pairs. So this sequence, this entire sequence of 23 pairs of chromosomes is the genome. So now that we have understood what is a genome, we will go into what is genome sequencing. So we understood that the arrangement of the nitrogen bases gives that particular protein, or that determines the function of certain gene. So it is very important that we understand the sequence in which these nitrogen base pairs are arranged in a chromosome, are arranged in the DNA molecule. So in genomic sequencing, what we essentially do is map the entire structure of DNA, as in we will particularly look into what is the sequence of nitrogen bases that are in the DNA molecule. Deciphering the exact order of base pairs. So the exact order in which the nitrogen base pairs are arranged in the DNA molecule, we will find out via genome sequencing. This is very important because the arrangement of the nitrogen base pairs determines the protein that is produced from the gene, or the function that particular gene performs. So there are a lot of projects that have been done to sequence the genome in a human chromosome or in human cell. So we will start with Human Genome Project. So this is an international effort that has been made to map the entire genome of human being. So Human Genome Project, it was started in 1990s to map the base pairs, the sequence of base pairs, that is genomic sequencing of the entire human genome, that is all the 23 pairs of chromosomes. that is 46 chromosomes. It has been completed in 2003. So this is the first such project and it is an international project. So recently genomic sequencing is in news because there was another telomere to telomere consortium. This is also an international collaboration. It is said that it has sequenced the first complete human reference genome. So we have already seen that Human Genome Project has done this in 2003 itself. So what is the speciality of this telomere to telomere consortium? So if we see, the Human Genome Project has only mapped 92% of the human genome. That is, if there are 100 base pairs in the entire cell, it has only sequenced 92 base pairs. That is only 92% of the chromatin. This Human Genome Project has left out 8% of the chromatin. Why is that so? So, if we see, this is the chromatin in the cell, human cell, it is said that there is two types of chromatin, that is euchromatin and heterochromatin. So euchromatin and heterochromatin. What is the difference between euchromatin and heterochromatin? Euchromatin, U means true. So euchromatin is major part, and it was believed that this is the most important part of the genetic material. That is, it forms about 92%. This heterochromatin also was called junk DNA, was the 8% that was left out in the Human Genome Project. So Human Genome Project mapped the euchromatin part but has left out this 8%, that is the junk DNA. So recently this telomere to telomere consortium has mapped even this last remaining 8% of the human genome to give the first complete human reference genome. So for exam point of view, we need to know what is euchromatin, what is heterochromatin, and heterochromatin is also called junk DNA. And here telomere to telomere consortium is the first to give a complete human reference genome. So this brings us to the next important point. What is a telomere? This might also be asked as a prelims question. So this is the chromosome. So this ending parts, this edges, the tips are called telomeres. These edges are called telomeres. So these telomeres, telo means end. So telomeres normally consist of repeating sequences of DNA. So this was initially considered that it is heterochromatin or junk DNA, but recently it was discovered that even these telomeres or that junk DNA also determines how the genes are expressed. So even that junk DNA is important in the functioning of a human cell. So that is the reason why this T to T consortium has mapped even the last remaining telomeres or the 8%. So if we see, these two are international efforts to map a human genome. Now we will look into what are the Indian projects that have been done to map human genome. So now we have to understand, why should India do a human genome sequencing if it has already been done internationally? It is because there is a lot of diversity both in terms of race and ethnic diversities between the world or reference world population and Indian population. We all know that India consists of diverse races and ethnicities. So it is important for India to have its own human genome project so that the different diversities can be mapped and be known. So the first Indian project is the Genome India project. So for prelims examination, this is very important. The Genome India project, it is a collaboration of around 20 institutions. These 20 institutions include IASC and even some IITs. So in Genome India project is an earlier project. It is a collaboration of 20 institutions. What is the aim of this Genome India project? The Genome India project, the aim is to build a reference genome. A reference genome, as in they have evaluated or sequenced genomes of different races and from different places, so that we can have one single reference genome that comprises of all the differences or the diversities in the Indian population. So Genome India project, what are the institutions and what is its aim? This is important for the examination point of view. Next comes IndiGen Genome project. So this is the recent one, and this is conducted by CSIR as well as CCMB Hyderabad. This is Center for Molecular Biology in Hyderabad. So these are the institutes involved in IndiGen project. And what is the aim of this project? The aim is to undertake whole genome sequencing of thousands of individuals representing different ethnic groups of India. So in this project, basically they have taken up to sequence the genome of different races or different populations in the Indian subcontinent. So we need to know the differences between these two projects, what are the institutions involved, and what are the primary aims of these two projects for examination point of view. Having finished genomic sequencing and human genome project, we will move on to another important topic when it comes to biotechnology, that is fortified foods. This is particularly important for the examination because there is renewed push for introducing fortified foods. So initially we'll see what is fortification of food. So fortification is the practice of deliberately increasing the content of an essential micronutrient, that is vitamins and minerals, including trace elements, in a food so as to improve the nutritional quality of the food supply and provide a public health benefit with minimal risk to health. So all these words are very important when it comes to the definition of fortification. Now we will look at each of this individually. So it is a practice of deliberately increasing. That is, we will intentionally increase the concentration of certain element in the food. It is not accidental or it is not natural. So for example, we take a crop that grows naturally and has higher concentration of certain nutrient. That is not called fortification. Fortification is only if we deliberately increase the concentration of a substance. For example, if we add iodine in salt, that is, we are doing it deliberately, intentionally, so that can be called fortification. Next comes the content of essential micronutrients. So what are micronutrients? Here we need to understand there are two types of nutrients important for the human body, that is macronutrients and micronutrients. Macronutrients include our carbohydrates, proteins and fats. Micronutrients include vitamins and minerals. So why is it macro and why is it micro? Macronutrients are macro because they are needed in greater quantities for the human body. Micronutrients are needed in less quantity but are very essential for human body. So these are called micronutrients. So essentially in fortification, we add only micronutrients, not macronutrients. For example, iodized salt. Iodine is a mineral. So it is a micronutrient. It is an essential micronutrient. So only micronutrients are involved in fortification of foods. Next comes so as to improve the nutritional quality of the food supply and provide a public health benefit. So we'll take the example of iodized salt. So after addition of iodine, it has improved the quality of food supply, that is the quantity of iodine intake by the population has increased because we have added iodine in the salt. So it has resulted in a public health benefit. What is the public health benefit? We all know iodine deficiency will cause thyroid problems, particularly called goiter. That is, when iodine is not there, the thyroid gland does not work properly and it leads to goiter. If thyroid gland does not work properly and it does not produce the hormones, it will lead to decrease in the bodily functions. So that is goiter, and if there is iodine deficiency in the food intake, it will become a public health problem. That is, if many people are having the same thyroid problem, it becomes a public health issue. So by adding iodine in salt, we have improved the quality of food supply and have also had this public health benefit. That is, the incidence of goiter in the population has considerably decreased. In fact, this is one of the success stories of food fortification. It has been very successful in reducing iodine deficiency. In fact, almost 70% of the world population has been shown to improve in terms of iodine deficiency after iodized salt has been introduced. Now, fortified foods has been in news recently because the government has taken a decision to introduce fortified rice. What is fortified rice? So fortified rice has been added with 3 micronutrients. We all remember micronutrients are both vitamins and minerals. So what is the mineral added? The mineral added is iron. What are the vitamins added to fortified rice? Vitamin B12 and folic acid. These two are vitamins and this is a mineral. So these two micronutrients are added to rice artificially. That is, after harvesting the rice, these are added in a mill to the rice so that any person who takes this fortified rice will get the health benefits that will come from the addition of these micronutrients. So why is this decision taken now? So recently we have also seen National Family Health Survey 5 has come out. The incidence or the prevalence of anemia has increased. It is almost 56%. So we have seen that anemia is increasing in the country. So how to combat anemia? Anemia is primarily caused by deficiency of iron, vitamin B12 or folic acid. These are the 3 important food contents that will help improve the condition of anemia. So to combat this increasing prevalence of anemia, Government of India has started fortified rice is to be distributed under various government schemes, including PDS and midday meals in schools by 2024. This fortified rice is also a part of our Anemia Mukt Bharat. And National Poshan Initiative or National Poshan Mission. So, this fortified rice introduction is in line with our schemes of Anemia Mukt Bharat and National Poshan Mission. These also aim to improve the condition of anemia in the general population. So, for prelims examination, we need to correlate these two schemes, that is introduction of fortified rice, what are the contents of fortified rice, and what are the other schemes that aim to improve anemia in the country, that is Anemia Mukt Bharat, National Poshan Mission, there is another National Iron Initiative. All these programs are aimed at reducing the anemia prevalence in the country. So we have seen what are the different kinds of fortified foods and how and what is the relevance in the current affairs part of fortified foods. Now we will see certain benefits and concerns regarding fortified foods. This can also be important for prelims as well as for mains examination. So if we see what are the benefits of fortified foods. So it tackles hidden hunger. So what is hidden hunger? So we see that malnutrition is generally calculated by underweight. How many children are underweight? How many have undergone stunting, wasting, etc. So these are the macro indicators by which we measure malnutrition or hunger. For example, Global Hunger Index measures these indices, but it does not measure certain deficiencies in micronutrients. That is, the child might have enough carbohydrates, enough proteins and enough fats, but the child may not be getting enough proteins and minerals. So he will not be having underweight or stunting or wasting, but he will have anemia or he will have other vitamin deficiency diseases. So it will not be seen as a hunger problem. So it will be hidden. So these micronutrient deficiencies will lead to hidden hunger. So fortification of foods in which we add micronutrients, we can tackle that hidden hunger. Next comes socially acceptable way to improve public health. So if we see, we already have programs like administration of iron and folic acid tablets to adolescents as well as pregnant women. But we see there is high prevalence of anemia both among adolescents and even pregnant women. So why is it not helping as much as it should? Because taking a tablet is generally not very much socially accepted. People might believe that taking external medications might not be good for their health. So they might think twice before taking a tablet. But if we have fortified foods, for example, we have added iron in rice itself. In that way, pregnant women will have that intake of iron. So it becomes socially acceptable among the general population. At the same time, we will improve the public health condition. Next comes, fortified foods are cheaper options to combat certain problems. For example, iodine deficiency. Iodine deficiency, if the person gets a thyroid problem, a goiter, it will become very costly for us to treat it. At the same time, if we have to give iodine tablets, if the person has to approach a doctor to get himself treated or to get himself protected from such iodine deficiency disorder, he will have to pay a lot more. But we have seen that iodized salt is very cheap. At the same time, it is very effective to prevent iodine deficiency disorders. The same is true for even fortified rice. If the patient has to buy iron and folic tablets, it will be costlier than just giving fortified rice, which will already have iron. So this is a cheaper option. So these are some of the benefits of fortified foods. But it is not all positive when it comes to fortified foods. There are certain concerns and challenges that await the introduction of fortified foods. So we'll see what are some concerns when it comes to fortified foods. So the first one is it may distort the balance in diet. So what is this distortion in the balance in diet? For example, the patient or the person is already taking external supplement. For example, iodine. He is already taking because he has gone to the doctor. But he will also get iodine through iodized salt. Now we cannot see many options in the market where the salt is not iodized. It is almost universally accepted that salt is always iodized. So the patient will get iodine from the doctor because he is taking external medications. At the same time, he is also taking iodized salt. This might lead to increase in iodine content in the body. So it will distort the balance. At the same time, if we say that we have fortified rice with iron, but we all know that rice is rich in carbohydrates. Rice is rich in carbohydrates, and it is generally suggested that patients with cardiovascular diseases or obesity should decrease their rice content because it is very rich in carbohydrates. But now that we have fortified rice with iron, there is also some advice that he should take fortified rice. So now there is a problem. So what if a patient with diabetes or cardiovascular problem takes a lot of rice, fortified rice? He or she thinks that it is good for his health because it has iron, folic acid and vitamin B12. But at the same time, it will also cause his diabetes or cardiovascular diseases to aggravate them. So there will be distortions in the balance of diet. So he will think that it is good for him, but it is actually not. So there will be that distortion in the balance in diet. Next comes difficult to withdraw. Now we have already seen that iodized salt is universally available and almost exclusively available. We cannot see salt that is not iodized. So this is one problem with such fortified foods. So even if one day we have almost tackled thyroid problems in the population, it becomes very difficult to withdraw iodized salt from the market. So this is a problem. So now that we have fortified rice with iron, and one day we have actually tackled problem of that vitamin B12 deficiency or folic acid deficiency in the future, we cannot withdraw fortified rice from the market. It is very difficult to change the market conditions once we have introduced certain item into the market. So that is a problem with fortified foods. So the next problem is it can promote junk food. So if we see certain companies producing junk food like chips, etc., can add certain micronutrients like vitamin A or D and say that it is good for health. Now that we have given education to the population that adding vitamins is good for their health, they will also think that such junk food is also good for health. But that is not the case. So this can be used by such companies to promote their own products. So this is also one of the concern with fortified foods. Now we will move on to this topic, that is biofuels. We will start with what is a biofuel. So any hydrocarbon fuel that is produced from an organic matter, that is living or once living material, in a short period of time, days, weeks or even months, is considered a biofuel. So again, every word of this definition is important for us to understand what is a biofuel. So we look at every word. Any hydrocarbon fuel. What is hydrocarbon? Any molecule that is having both carbon and hydrogen atoms. For example, our petrol has carbon and hydrogen atoms. At the same time, alcohol is C2H5OH. So ethyl alcohol also has carbon and hydrogen. So that is also a hydrocarbon. So if we see, alcohol is also a hydrocarbon. Our petroleum is also a bigger molecule, but still it will have fuels. Such fuel that is produced from an organic matter. So organic matter means something that is derived from living sources or biological sources. So produced from organic matter. The organic matter can be living or once living material. That is, when the fuel is being produced, the organic matter need not necessarily be alive. Even after it is dead or dried, for example, even after a plant is dried off, that is straw, it can also be called organic matter, and fuel can be produced from even straw. So organic material can be living or once living in a short period of time. So now comes the most important part, that is, we know all petrol and petroleum products are fossil fuels. So what is fossil fuel? Fossil fuel is basically when animals or organic matter dies and gets underneath different layers of Earth's surface, they undergo certain chemical changes. That is, we know fossils as in old living organisms that have been preserved. So fossil fuels are also derived from such organisms that have undergone chemical changes due to pressure and heat in deep layers of the earth. So our petroleum and petroleum products are also produced from organic matter, and they are also hydrocarbon fuels. So what is the difference between this petroleum and petrol products and biofuels? So the difference is, biofuels are produced in a short period of time. We know that petroleum is a fossil fuel and it has been produced over thousands of years, as in the organic matter goes through chemical changes over thousands of years to become the petroleum products that we are getting today. Whereas biofuels, it takes only a short period of time, that is days, weeks, or even months to produce biofuel. So this is one of the crucial difference between our normal fossil fuels and biofuels. So we have seen what are biofuels. Now we will see the different types of biofuels. This is particularly important for prelims point of view and also for understanding what is the importance of biofuels. So the first is first generation biofuel. First generation means the biofuel is produced from food sources. Food sources such as sugar, starch, vegetable oil, or animal fats. So all these are the sugar, starch, all these are organic matter and are also food sources. These are taken by human beings as well as animals. So first generation biofuels are produced from these food sources. For example, we have bioethanol. Bioethanol, that is alcohol, that can be produced by fermentation of these substances such as sugar or starch. So bioethanol is an example of first generation biofuel. So, but we see there are certain disadvantages with first generation biofuels. That is, first generation biofuel is produced from food sources. We already have problems with food security. There is not enough for human beings or animals to consume food. So if we start producing biofuels from such food sources, it will not be as advantageous as we think it is. So it might lead to food scarcity. So what we have done is we have gone on to second generation biofuels. So here what is the problem? There is a conflict with food security. So now we have gone to producing from non-food crops or portions of food crops that are not edible and considered as waste. So we see the problem is this is human food or animal food. So we started making fuel from waste products or non-food products, that is stems, husks, wood chips and fruit skins. For example, after we process rice, the grain is processed, we are left with husk. So that husk is not for consumption. We can use that for production of biofuel. So that is still an organic matter and it contains carbon and hydrogen. So it can be used to produce biofuel. So this solves our problem of that conflict with food security. So now we do not have any problems with food security, but still there are certain problems with second generation biofuels as well. So what are that? So here if we see, these are produced from non-food crops. If a farmer takes up his farm for production of non-food crops, exclusively for producing biofuels, so he is changing the land use of his agricultural land from food crops to non-food crops. So here also we might not have conflict directly with food security, but there is a conflict with land availability. That is, if there is 1 acre of land producing rice, but we have seen that second generation biofuels can be produced from a crop such as jatropha. Such crops are non-food crops but are used in production of biofuels. What the farmer does is stop cultivating rice and he will start cultivating these non-food crops. So what happens ultimately? The production of food or the production of food grains will be decreased. So there is a problem with land availability. So what we have done is, to solve this problem, we have gone to third generation biofuels. So what are third generation biofuels? Third generation are produced from microorganisms like algae. So here there is no relation with any crops. Here we cultivate algae. We can take a small body of water and we can cultivate algae. Algae is also unicellular or microcellular plants. So these are also organic matter and these can be used to produce biofuels. So in this way, there is no conflict with food security or land availability. So this way we have solved these two problems. So but still there are some problems with third generation biofuels. That is, it won't take up more carbon dioxide inside than what it gives out. That is, there is net emission of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So it is polluting at the end of the day. So to tackle this problem, we have gone on to fourth generation biofuels. This is the latest and this is produced from crops that are genetically engineered to take in high amounts of carbon and are grown and harvested as biomass. That is, these are specially genetically engineered plants that will be grown so that the plant will take more carbon than it gives out as biofuel. That is, for example, this plant, after it has been converted to biofuel and has been used, it will still leave some carbon residue, that is carbon capture, that can be captured so that won't be released into the atmosphere. So it is not a net emitter but net capture. So it takes in more carbon dioxide than it is emitted. So this is the latest generation of biofuels. Now we see certain advantages and disadvantages in biofuels. We'll first look at what are the advantages. So there is biofuels are renewable source. So we can grow as many crops or we can grow as much algae and produce as much biofuel as we want. So it is renewable, it is not limited in number. And then availability. For example, if we take fossil fuels like petroleum products, they are only available in certain parts of the world, that is the Middle East or certain river basins or offshore petroleum sources. So it is not available all throughout. Whereas if we take biofuels, they can be available anywhere. We can grow algae or crops anywhere and convert it into fuel. And then comes, it is less polluting. Biofuels are comparatively less polluting than fossil fuels. Why? For example, if we take municipal solid waste can be converted to biofuel. So here we are preventing this municipal solid waste to become pollutants. It will become fuel and it can be used. So it is less polluting than fossil fuels. Next comes economic advantages. So biofuels, they are produced from crops. If a farmer produces a crop for biofuel, he will get more money than what he could have earned through food crops. So it gives some economic advantage to the farmers to increase their income as such. So next comes disadvantages of biofuels. So after seeing the advantages, there are a few disadvantages with biofuels as well. What are those? So biofuels are less efficient. This is primarily the reason why the use of biofuels is not as much as our petroleum products. So what is less efficient? So if we see the amount of energy produced, for example, by 1 liter of petrol, if 1 liter of petrol produces certain amount of energy, biofuel, for example bioethanol, 1 liter will not produce this much. It will only produce, let's say, 80% or 60% of the energy. So it is not very efficient. Biofuels are not very efficient in producing the energy. So this is one of the most important disadvantage that is stopping us from increasing the use of biofuels. Next comes, it affects food and land availability. As we have already seen, food and land availability is a problem in first generation and second generation biofuels. At this moment, these are the only two kinds of biofuels that are in production right now. Third generation and fourth generation biofuels are still yet to come into the application phase. So this is an important disadvantage in the use of biofuels. Next comes high water usage. So the water usage to produce a non-food crop such as jatropha for the production of biofuels or for growing algae for third generation biofuels is very high. We already know that there is water stress in the country as well as the world. So this becomes an important disadvantage for increasing the production of biofuels. So this is very important topic for prelims examination as well as mains examination, because we have something called ethanol blending program. What is this ethanol blending program? In this program, the government aims to increase the blending of, for example, if we get petrol from a petrol bunk, the government says that 20% of this should be ethanol, bioethanol. So 20% bioethanol and the rest 80% is our petroleum product. So we are blending ethanol with petroleum. So we have a program called ethanol blending program, where we aim to introduce 20% of bioethanol in the petroleum products. So recently, government has also increased this particular 20% and also moved the timeline ahead. So this becomes an important topic for both mains as well as prelims examination. So this is about biotechnology and medicine when it comes to science and technology. Thank you, students.